in North Fork Kings GSA, and it's extremely important to us that landowners are involved right from the beginning. So we're really thankful that you've come today. We have a great agenda for you. You're going to hear from GSA General Manager Justin Mendez, a Sigma review and Allocation 101. And then you'll hear from Joel Kimmelshoe of Land IQ. Land IQ is going to be an extremely important tool for the allocation process. So it's really important to us that the landowners understand how the technology works with the allocation. And I'm sure you're going to have questions along the way. We do ask that you hold your questions till the end. We will have a Q&A portion. If you don't have a question today, but let's say in a week or a month, a question arises from today's presentation or one of the workshops, we encourage you to reach out to us at North Fork, and we would be happy to answer any questions. Reach out to your fellow committee members, board members, and they are a resource to you as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Justin.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Great turnout today. Thank you for coming. A lot of familiar faces from our committees and our board here today. I'm going to do some background slides. So some of this is old information, but Sigma is a law passed in 2014, mandates groundwater sustainability by 2040. By 2040, we cannot pump more than what we bring in. Grants local control to GSAs. So the GSA is not a federal or a state entity. It is locally controlled, but the deal that they made was, we'll let you police yourselves, but we're not giving you any money to implement this stuff, was the deal that was made. The primary reasons for adopting Sigma, these undesirable results, or what we call the 6 deadly sins of Sigma: declining groundwater levels, reduced groundwater storage, degradation of water quality, impacts to interconnected streams, and land subsidence. There are 5 dots on there because the 6th dot is saltwater intrusion. So we got a discount because we don't live next to the ocean. All of these things are what we have to prevent in our GSA. The state regulation piece. DWR is the good cop, where we turn in our GSPs, our sub-basin reports. We turn those into DWR. It's a checklist of things. The bad cop, if we're inadequate, we go to the State Water Board for probation. That's what our neighbors in the Tulare Lake sub-basin, they were the first ones to go through it. And then since then, the lawsuit was filed. We have a choice of, with our GSP, if we're compliant and if it's acceptable, we stay on this local path of policing ourselves. If it's not, we go to the State Water Board, and then they set the fees, they set the policies. And I think when you run the numbers based off of like the Tule sub-basin probation numbers, like that's where the fees alone can cost the GSA $6 million, and an interim plan from the State Water Board could be in the tens of millions of dollars to the GSA. We are in the Kings sub-basin, so this is us here at the south end of it, and this is our group for our group project that we report to DWR. That includes North Kings, Central Kings, and Kings River East. So this is like FID, Consolidated, and Alta at the top. Us, McMullen, and James on the west. And then these yellow pockets are some of the cities within Consolidated that form their own GSA. As a sub-basin, we negotiated and we were kind of assigned an overdraft of 50,000 acre feet in North Fork alone. So here in the green, minus 50,000. Later on, as we adjusted our water budget, we're kind of looking at more of closer to 70,000 acre feet overdraft. So our range is kind of between 50 and 70. And the GSP is where it outlines how we calculate this. Local control, this is your local board of directors. We're a special legislation district drawn into 7 divisions that includes 10 member units of the Kings River Water Association. We have 3 public utilities. We also have Liberty Water District and the County of Fresno. The County of Fresno is where the white areas or the groundwater only areas are represented. And here's kind of a map of the GSA with the by water district. So 2020 was the first GSP. Everybody submitted. All GSAs submitted. DWR kicked them out. Like, hey, these are incomplete. You guys need to redo your GSP. So in 2022, everybody resubmitted a plan. We were conditionally approved pending 12 corrective actions. They gave us this laundry list of, you're approved, you need to fix these 12 things. Those 12 things is what we addressed in the revised GSP that we submitted in January of this year. Our corrective actions can be summarized into 3 main things. Confined aquifer study, some more data gaps surrounding the interactions of groundwater and surface water, and domestic well mitigation plan. As a sub-basin, we came up with a domestic well mitigation plan. That was checked off. Interconnected surface waters, we have to supply some data, not really a huge problem for us in North Fork. Confined aquifer study and subsidence, this is gonna be our big ticket item in North Fork, is subsidence, and we'll get to later. But those are the 3 main things that we had to focus on in our revised GSP. Simultaneously, we have these interim milestones, right? Like these markers that we have to meet every year to show that we're making progress, or to show that we're doing what we said in our plan. That 70,000 acre feet of overdraft that we need to address, it's gonna take time to do so. We could kick the can down the road completely and wait till 2040 and then just shut off all pumping throughout the whole GSA. Or the plan is, with an allocation, to stretch it out and ramp it down gradually. Here's an example of one of our interim milestones and sustainable management criteria, right? These are the things that we're going to monitor. And so for groundwater levels, we noticed a downward trend. And so we've created this glide path here of saying our goal is to stay within this zone. If 15% of our monitoring wells, the water depth falls below this red line, that's an undesirable result. Subsidence. As I mentioned, this is going to be our big problem here. We had said, we measured about, our undesirable result was 3 feet of subsidence. As you can see here, this brick red color is about 3 feet. So now what our mission is going to be, as you can see, the deeper subsidence is in our neighbors of Tulare Lake Subbasin. Our goal is going to be, yes, we have subsidence. How much of this 3 feet is our own pumping here in North Fork is kind of our homework assignment that we need to figure out. And so with subsidence, with meeting our interim milestones, that creates this need for an allocation in North Fork Kings. We have our range of an overdraft, 50,000 acre feet to 70. Some good news in our GSP, our list of projects, of recharge projects, majority of them, if not all of them, are either privately owned or belonging to a surface water district. But collectively, it comes out to about 51,000 acre feet. In 2040, we'll be able to recharge 50,000 acre feet. So I think this is an achievable number over time. Think of this overdraft as like a debt, all right? If anyone's ever used like the Dave Ramsey system, think of it as we owe 70,000. We have 2 options. We can make more money, convey more water, capture more water, recharge water, or we could spend less. We can pump less. And we plan on doing both simultaneously. Today's a groundwater allocation, because we have to coordinate with our subbasin, right? We want everyone playing under the same rules within the subbasin. I like to break out an allocation into two components. There's some math homework and there's some English homework. In the math homework is what a lot of this workshop and the next workshop will be about. How do we get to that number? The second part is the rules and regulations of our district, right? Who has what water? When do we do pumping restrictions? Where, in what zones are things different? So the subbasin as a whole, like officially started looking at a water accounting framework, the math behind an allocation in February of 2025. North Fork Kings had probably spent 2 years looking at it prior, and then we got that list of 12 corrective actions, and we said, hey, we passed the test, let's focus on these 12 corrective actions, and we'll hit pause on what an allocation looks like. So after we submitted in January, the subbasin said, okay, hey, let's start working on the water accounting of the subbasin. The magic number is called the sustainable yield. We'll get into that specific definition, but that's what, when you go to water meetings, when you go to other GSAs, you'll hear that combination of words used, sustainable yield. What's our sustainable yield? What's our number? What's my number? North Fork was looking at this 2 years ago as a way of hoping to give landowners some predictability on what's going to happen so that you can plan for the future. Some GSAs, it's a naughty word, allocation, and they don't want to think about it, they don't want to touch it, they have no plans of reducing pumping anytime soon. In other cases, they went straight to their sustainable yield right out of the gate. And some of them, our neighbors, some of them are on probation, their system didn't really work, so while no one wants to go on an allocation, I think the way the Kings has done it has been, not precise, but it's been logical in taking our time. Speaking of other GSAs, an allocation is not a unique concept to North Fork. Our neighbors across the river have created a native sustainable yield of 0.66. Westlands has had their plan out for a while of starting at 1.3 and going down to 0.6 in 2030. East Kauai, 0.82, a hard cap on 2.5 acre feet of pumping and $500 an acre foot of fines is what they're doing on the east side of Kauai. So what our timeline is here, we kicked off the conversation in February of 25. Right now, I think most people here most people are familiar with Watermark, the tool that we used for well registration here in North Fork. That's how also we're going to integrate some other data. It's going to end up being like a banking app for you to go on and see the water that you have in terms of groundwater credits, et cetera. And so we're doing a pilot with Reed Ditch Company, a mutual water company here in the GSA, got about a dozen users. So it's a small sample size that we can test out the bugs of Watermark. Next year, knock on wood, everything goes right with our pilot test. Next year would be a GSA-wide pilot program where you would get a statement to see how it looks, how it works. And then eventually but there would be no enforcement, right? So you'll see like a mock bill, a mock invoice of how, these are how much credits you have, this is how much we think you pumped, this is the difference. And then after that, we would go into, in 2027, the real deal. I talked about sustainable yield. One of the things we kind of had a problem with internally over the past 2 years is we were using native sustainable yield and sustainable yield interchangeably. They are not. They are two different things. Think of sustainable yield as the total number you can pump. Native sustainable yield is going to be like a separate bucket or a separate box that feeds into it, and that's the natural groundwater. Over this period, we're going to be doing the math part, and we're also going to be talking about the rules and regs. Or we plan on allowing for transfers. How much can you carry over if you don't use it? What's the sweet spot of allowing you to carry over? And then it's going to come down to enforcement. Enforcement, there will be some penalties based off of how we measure the water. And how we measure it, we have currently in our rules and regs for North Fork Kings, we have a very flexible system. We use Land IQ as a default. And if you don't like those Land IQ numbers, if you see them and they don't look right to you, you have the option of using your meter data. As long as you share it with us, we'll accept it. There is lots of debates on what's better, right? Meters are more exact. I would say, Joel, cover your ears. Land IQ might not be perfect, but when you think of things like how much a meter costs, the maintenance, how are we going to read it? Am I going to hire a GSA staff to go out and check it? Probably not. What we'd like to do is a telemetry system to, send that data into Watermark. So the two, so meters can end up getting really expensive for the farmer and for the GSA. Land IQ is 80 cents an acre, 81 cents if I remember the invoice properly. And so what I could do is I'll hand it over to Joel, but I can stop for maybe some quick questions on background. If anyone's got.
How many acres are on the GSA?
We're about 168,000 acres in North Fork Kings. All right, Joel.
I got it right here. Good morning. As Justin said, I'm Joel Kimmelshoe. I'm with a company called Land IQ. We're out of Sacramento. And he kind of did a brief introduction of the work that we do related to consumed water, or ET. And I'll give a little kind of primer on all of that, the difference between consumed and applied water, and what we measure, how we do it, etc.
Could you raise the volume a little bit?
I sure can. Land IQ is, we're a company of about 50 people, and we purposefully developed our company with two main technical disciplines in mind, one being land-based scientist, of which I am. My family farms in Butte County. We grow almonds, we call them that up there, walnuts, and some row crops. And I grew up irrigating those crops 12 summers in a row before I escaped to college. But one of my brothers runs our family farm to this day. So the land-based sciences part of who we are is very important. A bunch of us understand on-the-ground agronomic systems. We also purposefully merged that land-based sciences group with what we call a group called spatial scientists. Those are folks that look at things from the sky remotely sensed scientists, and also GIS folks and people that look at things, again, from the sky. We cover very, very large landscapes. So we kind of combine those two things together. It's great to do boots on the ground everywhere, measure everything everywhere, but when you're covering such large landscapes, that's not feasible. So you have to kind of merge the two together. We also have a development crew that takes all the information that we produce and puts it out on web tools and such. We work for about 35 to 40 different GSAs and or irrigation districts. And if I get this question once, I get it 1,000 times. Just tell me how much water I use. There are two types of water use. There's applied water and consumed water. Consumed water, you can also call that ET. We do the consumed water, or ET component. That's what we provide. Applied water is that water, as you I'm sure know, pump and apply to the surface of the ground. That is usually measured with a meter. Consumed water is that water that is evapotranspired. So after you apply it to the surface of the ground, what proportion of that water that you applied to the surface of the ground is either evaporated or transpired through the crop, going off out of your system as water vapor into the sky. So it is the true loss or use of water. If you apply 100 acre-feet of water and you consume 90 acre-feet of water, you can never consume more than you apply, right? That's not possible. So if you apply 100 acre-feet of water and you consume 90 acre-feet of water, you still have 10 acre-feet of water remaining. Where is that 10 acre-feet? It's still in your system. You haven't really used it. It's stored in your soil profile for future use, or it passes the root zone and goes to groundwater for future use. So the consumed water portion is the actual water use. In a water balance, it's the water that leaves your system out the top. So applied does not equal consumed. I want to repeat that. Applied does not equal consumed. They're two different things. If managed well, your consumed water is most of your applied water, as I mentioned in my example, but the applied water plus precipitation has to be greater than your consumed. Think of precipitation as just another irrigation event, although it comes at the wrong time and it's highly inefficient, right? So I mentioned there's ways of measuring water use. And like I said, applied water and consumed water. Applied water you measure with meters. Consumed water, there's a whole bunch of ways you can measure consumed water. You can look at it from a crop coefficient standpoint, land use, crop type, which we do also, and I'll mention that in a minute. But we're over here on the evapotranspiration side. Again, crop coefficient, you get a crop heat, crop ET. If you use a reference crop and a crop and a coefficient and you get a crop ET, every almond orchard is the same. Every alfalfa field is the same. They're all, and we know that's not true. So that's where the remotely sensed evapotranspiration processes came about. When you get over here on the remotely sensed side, you can have non-calibrated or ground truth calibrated. And that's where we hang our hat, is in the ground truth calibrated side of remote sensing. And I'll describe that. So Justin knows this better than I do, but we follow the regulations too. And when the State Water Resources Control Board, those that got put in with the State Water Resources Control Board, came out with their description, they first came out with, you got to meter everything everywhere. That's probably not feasible and probably not equitable across an entire ag landscape. Unfortunately, right now, I live in an urban environment. I grew up in the country. I like living in the country, but I got to work there, so that's for now. But I have a meter on my house, and my neighbor has a meter on their house, and their neighbor has a meter on their house. They're all on the same line. They're all in the same pipe diameter. They're all in the same pressure. They're calibrated all the same. All the meters are the same. You can use meters in urban environments to assess how much water a person uses in that regard. In agriculture, you have wells of this diameter, wells of this diameter, this type of meter, that type of meter, installed right, not installed right, maintained right, not calibrated, calibrated. and the telemetered part, it's very complicated. So that's kind of where the ET side of things came out. But the State Water Resources Control Boards first started out with meters, and in the areas that we work, a lot of your neighbors said, hey, can we please look at ET as well, because that's the true consumed water use out the top. So they did put in some qualifications for ET. So including sufficient details about crop irrigation efficiency are provided, and contributions of precipitation, which we measure, and other sources of consumptive use are known and accounted for. So that was kind of a boon to this whole regulatory process, that you get some options. I talked about ground truthing. Why do we do ground truthing? And I'll show you, well, this is the area that we work in this entire blue area and these areas here. The red dots on the map are our ground truthing stations. Fancy words, those are called eddy covariance and surface renewal ground truthing stations. Don't need to worry about that. What you do need to worry about is those are the types of stations that you see here in different crops and situations that measure actual ET on the ground for the purpose of calibrating an image, a remotely sensed image. I like to say it's no different, and it's actually true, no different than you as a grower calibrating your spray rig. You care about things like PSI, nozzle size, ground speed, etc., to calibrate your spray rig so that you don't put on too much chemical or too little chemical. You do that on the first row, you calibrate on the first row, and you go across your field, and you hope by the time you get to the edge of your field, it's still calibrated and you're good. These stations measure things like min temperature, max temperature, air speed, wind speed, net radiation, soil moisture, those things that we use to calibrate remotely sensed imagery. Same thing. All of our work is tied to the ground, or it's called a data-driven method. We are driven by the data of the measurements on the ground that are true, actual ET. So, and that's harder, it takes more time, but the point in doing that is to take that plus or minus, that variability, and shrink it down. So you're not at plus or minus 20%, you're plus or minus 8%, plus or minus 6%. Just like your spray rig, you're never gonna be perfect, but you wanna get that as tight as possible. So you're not spending too much money putting on too much chemical, or you're not putting on too little chemical and it doesn't have the effect that you want it to have. Same concept. Why do we do it? We do it because it's defensible. You can look at the ground and say, look, it was that there, and our model said it was this here, and it correlates. And if it doesn't correlate, we have to answer the question why it didn't correlate. But we've had very good correlation because we are so dense in our network of stations. It provides independent validation. It calibrates our models to actual field conditions that are going on. If we have cloud cover, for example, that's a good thing. Rain is a good thing for 2.5 months at a time in a non-calibrated remotely sensed method that only uses imagery, can't see through the clouds. How do you know what your ET was? So we rely on those station network to term that when we have those types of conditions. And we have a team of about 12 to 14 agronomic and spatial scientists. We term our work a ground-up approach. We do not provide ET where we do not have stations. We are a data-driven approach. But we have now up to about 95 stations, and you can see them all here in certain areas of the valley. Including on those, we have on almost all of them multiple rain gauges, because precipitation is a critical component of the water balance. We want to know how much precipitation hit the ground so that we can account for that, as well as estimating the consumption of applied water. We do that on about 3.8 million acres and about 2.5 million acres of actual cropped fields. The use of the data is many-fold. Justin talked about allocations. Yeah, so you're going to have an allocation related to a threshold. And I'll talk about a daily ET tool we are developing in response to grower demands in a minute. But you want to make sure that you know where you are in relation to that threshold. So if you exceed it, you don't get fined, or and all of that, the policy side of the equation. People use it for water balance, for groundwater modeling, for allocations, for fee structures, for just water management. Irrigations double use it. They use it for their GSA work, and they also use it for their irrigation district water management work. So it's multifaceted. ET is the biggest outflow in the bank account that Justin was talking about. It's a debit. It's going out. So we deliver a number of products. The first product that we deliver, of course, is everything I've been talking about, is ET on a field-by-field basis. And you can see these field boundaries here. Those are hand-digitized field boundaries. We also work for the California Department of Water Resources, and we map every single agricultural field in California. 460 some odd thousand fields, 2 acres and greater. We do crop mapping on the whole state. Our accuracy in that crop mapping is about 97%. And when we get something wrong, we don't confuse almonds for carrots. We'll confuse almonds for peaches, which has a very similar consumptive use, or ET. So we know the crop mapping, we know the field boundaries, and we can work within those homogeneous crop types. So the first product that we deliver is ET. We care a lot about accuracy because I can't come to you or 35 or 40 of the other groups that we work for and say, well, I think we're about this close. That's not going to get it done when you're starting to go down the path of allocations. So this is just an example of levels of accuracy. This is an independent accuracy independent validation. We compare what our monthly model says versus what the station said. So when you have a measurement on the ground, how close are you to the actual to predicted? And that's just an example of that here. We're looking at all that stuff on the back side. We do a lot of work with cooperating growers after the fact and compare applied water from their calibrated, validated, installed correctly, maintained correctly meters to what we consume, applied versus consume. And again, if we're within about 80, 90, 95% of a highly efficient irrigation system, that tells us we're right about where we should be. So we do a lot of different things to talk about accuracy. The second product that we deliver, I talked about already, is crop mapping. And I already mentioned it, but that is kind of critical because now we can bin or analyze by crop type. If we don't know the crop type, we're saying, okay, here's the lowest ET field in all of North Fork Kings, and here's the highest ET field in all of North Fork Kings. Some of those are almonds, some of those are walnuts, some of it's alfalfa. But if you can bin by crop type, they have a narrower range within that crop, and it helps you better understand and refine the ET. So we provide crop type as well. You can do things like this and determine a cumulative consumption in almond orchards. And this is 4,225 orchards that are mature orchards. And this is the range, and this is the average. So we look at all these orchards that are out there by specific crop type. This too is another way of looking at it. Different crops consume different amounts of water as you go along. All of the data that I'm showing includes precipitation. So if you take a look at these numbers and say, my gosh, my almonds don't consume 42 inches of applied water. Well, they don't. They're consuming precipitation too. So you got to keep that in mind. But we can, because we measure the precipitation, we can subtract that out as well. The third thing we deliver, I may have mentioned that we have rain gauges on all of these stations, and we use also in addition trusted publicly available precipitation rain gauges so we can get a bunch of points on the map, like I said before, not just like the one rain gauge in Hanford represents this over here or that over there, because it doesn't, because we know the rainfall varies across a landscape, and we're continuously measuring that as well, because that is an important part. Like in this case, down in this landscape down in Bakersfield in the water year 2024, the rainfall down here was about 6 inches, and up here northeast of Visalia, it was 13 inches, so twice as much. Very critical to the water balance and how we're determining the consumed water. And we do a lot of back after the fact assessments of precipitation. I won't go into this, but just know that we're looking at that as well. The fourth thing that we deliver is what's called permanent crop age. And why would you care about how old an orchard is? We use the age of an orchard in our modeling process. We know that the canopy of a 2-year-old walnut tree is smaller than a canopy of a 20-year-old walnut tree. So you're going to consume less water with a smaller tree than you would with a larger tree. So again, the example is almonds, but this is age of all those orchards that I showed you, the 4,225 or 7 orchards I showed you before. And you can see that the consumption increases with age until that canopy gets to a point in which it's full canopy and it kind of goes on its merry way. If you assume that every orchard out there, like in a crop coefficient times a reference crop ET, is a mature orchard, you're overestimating the consumption because some of those orchards are not full canopy, they're younger. Okay, the 5th and very important product that we deliver is pick up the phone. We'll pick up the phone. If you have a question about your ET, we will talk to you individually and work with you. We do that for some growers in all of the other areas that we work in. It's, you can email us, call us. We have a crew of people that will answer your questions and work with you. And as Justin said, we are never perfect, but that's our goal, is to be as close to actual as possible. And so far, in the growers that we've talked to, we've been able to answer almost every one of their questions. And some people defer, which I think is a great thing, to have an option to defer to a meter. But remember, what you're reporting with a meter is applied water. We're reporting consumed water, 2 different things. But we will talk with growers if you have any questions, and my number and email is on the last slide, I think. So you can take a picture of that if you want. Okay, so we've been doing this 30-day stuff, this ET that I'm describing now, since 2016, and it's grown over time, and you saw the map. The growers that we've been working with long-term and in GSAs and irrigation districts to say, you know, I like your it's a monthly number, okay, and it's delivered 30 days later because it takes us about a month to analyze. So it's a 30-day number delivered 30 days after the fact. They say, you know, we like your number, but it jives with our long-term applied water that we're monitoring as well. It seems to be about right. Thank you. He says, but man, I cannot use it to manage my water. It would be great, Joel, if Land IQ would figure out a way to give us, rather than a 30-day number 30 days late, a daily number a day or 2 late. So I grew up on a farm. I know growers, never satisfied. I get it, and we appreciate the challenge. So over the last 1.5 years or 2, we've been putting our heads down and trying to figure that out. So we're beta testing with Tulare Irrigation District and Coelho Water District and a couple other entities right now, daily ET product. The purpose in doing this, and I'll start off by saying, the 30 days in the daily ET product is reconciled back to the trusted 30-day number in the 30-day product. So the numbers in the end will never change, they'll be the same. It's just delivering something to the growers such that they can track it online and say, where am I in my process of the year? So the grower simply fills out a pretty quick form, label your field, label your threshold, and I'll talk about that in a second. The threshold means what is my allocation, or if you don't have an allocation, what do I not want to exceed in my consumption? I'm going to stay below 40 inches in my almond orchard. And so what you put that in, and then if you have an annual crop, it allows you to add up three triple cropping in the same field in 1 year, and you put in your plant date and your harvest date estimated as those crops. And it produces a consumption curve on the water year. So from October 1 through present day, these spikes are precipitation. This is the increasing consumption as you're going through the year. You can have cumulative, and this is the figure that has the threshold value. So that was that threshold or limit or an allocation that people wanted to put in. This is for almond orchards. We have thousands of almond orchards of past historical consumption, so we know what the range is historically. And so this brown line is the 85th percentile on that range. This green line is the 15th percentile on that range of almond orchard consumption. The pink line there is the average. The purple line is that single almond orchard, that block, that orchard that the grower picked and put the information about. It's cumulative consumption as you're going through the year. And the dashed line off of the purple dashed line off of the purple solid line, this is present day, is the forecast of where that orchard is going to end up. And this orchard's in good shape because here's the threshold or the allocation, and by the end of the water year, which is projected to be at the end of September, that orchard's fine. This would allow the grower, if down in here early in the beginning of the irrigation season, if the forecast is exceeding the threshold, to make some decisions as you're going along to try not to exceed that threshold. This also has a manager and GSA level tool. Growers only see their fields. Managers, GSA managers see all fields, so they can work with you on those growers that sign up for the tool. We don't do this in a closed, all this work we don't do in a closed environment. We've developed an advisory board and team of folks that we work with. Blake Sandin and Alan Fulton look at they're retired extension agents for many, many years. Some of you may know Blake, he's in Kern County, or was. They look at our results every month, and then we also have a larger group that we get together once or twice a year and make them put the pressure on us to see how well we're doing. So we don't do this in a closed environment. So there's my email and my phone number, and I'm happy to answer questions, I guess, later on. And thanks for your attention. Appreciate it.
One thing with Land IQ and Watermark are two separate things. Watermark is your individual account within North Fork. That's our like banking app. Think of Land IQ as like a stock index, or like, you know, it's another software that feeds into the app. They're two different things. They're going to work together. It's still a work in progress. And so if you do go on your Watermark account and you click on your Land IQ data, that's not 100% accurate right now. So we're working on those things, but eventually the plan is to have the two work together.
So North Fork Kings GSA is committed to a thorough and transparent outreach process regarding allocation in particular. So we did start an effort about 2 weeks ago around the allocation topic. So the first thing that we did, and we're really excited about it, is we launched an Engage page. So it's engage.northforkkings.org. Some of you have already found it and have participated on that, and we've been able to get back to you on questions. But what this page really does is it allows us the opportunity to hear from you, your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, and then respond back to you in a timely manner and have that one-to-one communication between the GSA and the landowner. Also, you might have already seen my face on these introductory videos just explaining the outreach effort and the allocation effort. So we will have more videos, but I'll explain that on the next slide. We've had an email blast go out. If you're not getting our newsletters or our email blasts, please sign in at the back so that we can get you on that list, because that will be one main thoroughfare in regard to information. You're all here, so hopefully you saw the workshop series promo, but that was really important to us to get you in a room, especially with this first one, because this lays the ground level information for the next workshops to come. Our summer newsletter was all focused on allocation, so if you didn't see that, you can see that on our website, but you can always refer back to that to kind of understand the ideas surrounding allocation. One other exciting thing that we have started is a LinkedIn account. So if you have a LinkedIn and you're active on there, we ask you to follow it. It allows us the opportunity to speak to you, but also for the state to see what we're doing in North Fork Kings GSA that set us apart from others. So what's to come? So obviously you're here at Workshop Series, at the workshop number 1. We'll have a second one on Ask the Experts on September 24th. That's a panel discussion. Each one will have a little different formatting. So we'll get all the experts on a panel and allow you the opportunity to just ask as many questions as you want. This is really a clarifying workshop for you guys. And then our third workshop is the grower to grower. That one is where we're going to set up tables, probably in that room, and allow you the opportunity to sit down with one another with an expert at the table to figure out how you're going to adapt your operations to the allocations. One other thing we're doing is some video explainers. So we recognize that these topics are complex. So it's important to the GSA that we take these topics and break them out, especially if there's a frequently asked question that we're getting a lot. We want the opportunity to take that one question and make a video around it with the experts. Soon you're going to see a native sustainable yield graphic. That graphic is going to take all the things that you're learning and put it into one page and help you understand the equation behind allocation. So we really look forward to putting that in front of you, likely at one of the workshops to come. And if you didn't see the roadmap to sustainability, it should have been handed to you when you walked in. That explains how far we've come in the process as a GSA. One thing that we really like to say is board and committee meetings are public. Oftentimes we just see the committee members and board members, but you are welcome at those. That is like the one-stop shop to understand the technical discussions behind each of these conversations. I keep saying contact us. There's our email, help@northforkkings.org, and our phone number. I'm sure if you're from Riverdale, then you probably have Justin's cell phone number too, but you can always contact us there. So this is the QR code. If you're familiar with those, you can scan those to go to the Engage page. That's where I said you can ask your questions, and we'll either respond to you or we'll respond to you and say, hey, we're going to ask a video. We're going to answer your question in a video. You do have the QR codes on a piece of paper in front of you as well. Okay. With that, one note before I bring Joel and Justin back up, we do have our fabulous interns in the back. If you have not registered your wells and need a watermark account, they are available after the workshop to help you with that. For now, I'll bring them back up and we'll go ahead and do Q&A. Like I said, we are recording this, so we will have to have you either repeat a question or they'll repeat the question for you.
Couple things with our Q&A, maybe I should have mentioned, if obviously this presentation was very like grower focused, right? We didn't mention domestic wells. Domestic wells, if anyone here is strictly a domestic well user, if you pump less than 2 acre feet, you're a de minimis user and you're exempt from the regulations of SIGA. So like that pumping isn't regulated. When it comes to the ground truthing, because I said like, hey, right now if you go on Watermark, your land IQ number's not right. If you are curious, hey Justin, what's my land IQ number? We can work with you. Kevin Johansson from Provost and Pritchard is our general consultant engineer for North Fork, and he works with Joel and individual farmers. We've had some of our committee members. We look at their APN numbers and we get the data and we work through it. So if you are interested, talk to Joel and or Kevin or myself. And then another thing also is like this workshop is definitely geared towards like the terminology and the the 101s of an allocation, right? I know, like, does anyone here think like the state of California is doing a great job? Show of hands, right? So I know there's a lot of like legal questions, right? Like our friends over there have a lawsuit in play over the probation, right? So anything that's like politically focused or like legal focused, like we can't cover those questions here. Like those I would recommend like talking to Farm Bureau or an attorney about any action against the state. But like those topics, not for the workshop, but anything allocation and strategy-wise are perfect time for right now.
And one clarification I wanted to make, the ET that you see that we're producing is the total ET, precipitation and applied water. It's both. So if your meter says 20 acre feet and our ET says 22 acre feet, that also includes the ET from precipitation. So you got to add precipitation to your meter reading to get apples to apples. There's a question in the back.
So earlier in the presentation, you talked about the 50 to 70,000 deficit. So we all know that whether we're flood irrigating or drip irrigating, we're using a certain amount of water. So, but Joel, you also mentioned that even within the area, and we know that sometimes you get a bigger rainstorm here than there or there or there. So since all the water coming out of, let's say, Pine Flat, that's surface water, and I'm assuming that the districts that have larger water allocations and are closer to the dam, like FID and Consolidated, and so maybe they have a smaller deficit than we do farther down the line here. Is that a good assumption?
I think that's a fair statement.
So my question about that is, do we collectively add up all the rain that fell in the entire Kings River district and say that amount was spread out over the whole area? Or if you're in the spot somewhere farther north and east that got the 5 or 6 inches of rain and the next spot only got 3 inches of rain, are you getting, is that precipitation being collectively accounted for throughout the whole district, or is that real regional? Because we're looking at the groundwater collectively through the whole region.
Right. So on this slide here where I talked about the math portion of this groundwater allocation, right, and the subbasin itself is establishing this water accounting framework, which is basically, think of the big spreadsheet, and we're taking the precipitation throughout this whole area, and we're kind of arm wrestling over who's, how are we going to do this? So that is being worked out. And then in future workshops, when this water accounting framework is finalized, we're going to have those numbers to show you this is the precipitation for North Fork.
In your area, right?
Right. This is the precipitation for us. And then also along the lines, not just precipitation, but you mentioned Pine Flat and the way the river runs, right? So like the river seepage is in that calculation, right? Those losses, right? The folks here on the west end of North Fork have substantial losses compared to those up here. The upper river, here in the orange, green, and purple zone, they don't pay losses, right? So we're gonna have to take like KRWA accounting into effect, as well as individual water district data, and that's what this water accounting framework is.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word regional. So we pepper the landscape with precipitation gauges. And so let's say there's 2 precipitation gauges. There's a lot more than that we take readings on, but we'll just use 2 for an example. And they're, I don't know, 2 miles apart. And this one registers 5 inches of precipitation, and this one registers 7. Well, we're going to interpolate between those, and every field between those, that field that got the 5 is going to get 5. And if there's 10 fields in between, the next one's going to get 5.25, 5 or 5.2, 5.4, 5.6, 5. So it's, the more precipitation gauges you have, the more accurate you can be. And we see microclimates in that. And so it will rain more in one place than another, whether it's up against a hill. I know that's not the case down here, but there's different areas. And so the concept here is to have an actual evapotranspiration number for your field and an actual precipitation number for your field. The granularity is really important because you can always roll things up. You can take the fields within an irrigation district and say the average precipitation therefore across the irrigation district was X. But you can never chop it down unless you measure into field by field situation, unless you measure it that way or have enough measurements across the landscape to get to that. So the objective is to be as equitable with the water that hits people's fields from both the sky and from the ground.
What about from the rivers? If you're close to the river, do you get,
Yeah, we'll see. We call that, the question was, what about from the rivers? If you're at a field on the edge of a river, yeah, we'll see a little bit of seepage.
how far, a mile, 2 miles?
Oh, not that much, no. Usually you'll just see the edge effect of that, like a ditch, right?
But I can tell the difference on our wells when the rivers are running,
Sure.
and it lifts my water table
Yeah, so
because of that water is coming from the river. It ain't coming from the ground.
So that's where I was talking about the seepage,
Yeah.
right? And so folks who, right, like within North Fork, right, folks who are in like Laguna are gonna have a kind of a different set of numbers from folks like in Stinson and Crescent, right? And so seepage, precipitation, surface water deliveries, all of that is gonna be in this portion of it, and it all gonna add up to a sustainable yield number. The subbasin's gonna have a sustainable yield, and then each GSA is gonna have a sustainable yield. And so we're going to address the varying differences within the GSA. And the beauty or the problem, however type of person you look at things, going back to our board, or this map here, right? We're a special legislation because we have 2 public irrigation districts. We have 8 mutual water companies that are private canal companies. We have 3 community service districts. We also have Liberty Water District, and we have Clark's Fork Reclamation District, which are public. And then we have these wide areas. You know, I don't always like to assume, but is everyone here familiar with the term wide area and what that means?
No.
That is a groundwater dependent area. What happened was when Sigma first started,
No surface water,
No surface.
no surface water, groundwater only.
only.
Literally, this is how it came about. You know, I'll use Provost and Pritchard because they're the best, right? They make a map and they're showing everybody what district they're in. Okay, we have local control. What groups are we going to be in? Okay, this North Fork Kings is going to be this area. So then when you do a map with all the surface water districts and all the purple and the yellow and the teal and the green, all these other areas that didn't have an irrigation district on the map, they didn't have a color. They were the little white areas on the map. And that's how the term wide areas kind of went through all of Sigma. When they refer to wide area growth, it's like a,
But
no surface water.
when the canals are running, our water table changes.
Yeah.
Completely.
Sure.
Because we're close to the ditch, okay? And it makes a big difference. Because they used to run the ditches, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. They don't do that no more.
Right.
So it's,
in the, this is where I come to the, thinking of our Dave Ramsey approach, right? This is our debt, and this is our way of making more money, is delivering more water, conveying more water, filling the river, filling the ditches.
Correct.
All of that technically increases sustainable yield. So we are helping ourselves when we take water.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yep.
Do you know what kind of meters you're gonna allow to use?
Right now, we don't have like a particular set of standards.
Are you gonna base the allocation off of planted acres or acre acres?
The allocation will be gross acreage.
And then on the ET, how are you gonna differentiate between surface water and pump water?
We don't. That's gonna be up back in.
So we have to have meters on our.
Wow.
Via watermark, and part of our pilot test with Reed Ditch Company is a reporting from the surface water district. They're gonna be putting data into watermark. Land IQ's putting data into watermark to calculate it.
Yeah, we're the demand side, that's the supply side. Yeah, and so you can do it at the supply side on a big regional area. The district delivered X acre feet, 1,000 acre feet to this area, and you partition it out however you might want to do that, or you can do it at the field level scale too, but we're the demand side.
Well, we've had a problem where they're using your service. We have to farm scorched earth now. So that way it's not showing any weed or cover crop. I can't do cover crops anymore because that's showing water usage, even though we don't irrigate that. It's all on drip, if it's precipitation or whatever it is. And so we're having to farm differently now and, add a degradation to our soil because now we can't use cover crops.
Yeah, I get that question a lot about cover crops, and and there's a couple good reports that have come out. We provide the ET, but we see fields that have cover crops in them that let them go long, like into April, May, June, and might, like full orchard floor irrigation, for example. You'll have to mow your row centers, right? It's essentially orchard grass, essentially a cover crop. So if you have drip system, you're not going to have that center. You have to mow, but we'll see it. But we also see people that grow cover crops that work them down one way or another in March, and they get the benefit of that soil storage of that sponge that they've created, that organic matter. But then they don't have that cover crop there when the peak ET takes place. So it's really about management, and it's really site specific, as you can imagine. Yeah.
Got it. Zach?
Can we see that pilot program that you guys have going on right now?
I mean, the plan is to show the results. We have it on the agenda for our TAC committee today. It's going to go through our committee process throughout the whole time in public meetings, kind of showing the results.
But do you guys have a schedule already out for the allocation that we can view for when you're going to implement it next year? Just to see what it's going to look like?
We'll show everyone the result. Right now, we're just kind of like reporting read data into the system.
So there's no real schedule yet?
No.
Okay.
If you got a parcel that's in an irrigation district, but you don't receive surface water, are you still considered white zone?
Or if you're in an irrigation district, but you can't, I guess if you are a landowner in a mutual water company and you don't have stock, technically you would be a white zone. And I guess the same thing, would it work the same way? Like if someone in like Laguna or Riverdale didn't have conveyance?
It's just an accounting side. So in the accounting program, you're going to account for the different sources of water. If you don't have surface water, the sources are precipitation and groundwater compared to the land IQ data.
And so I could see if you were in a public irrigation district, you would still probably earn credits for precipitation, canal seepage, and river seepage, but not if you were a stockholder. If you weren't a stockholder in a mutual water company, you probably wouldn't get the canal seepage or the river seepage.
Does it make a difference whether you use flood or if you micro, whatever, is it going to make a difference on your allotment?
Your choice of irrigation method is your choice, and there's some very efficient surface irrigation growers out there, and there's some that aren't so efficient. There's some inefficient drip or micro sprinkler irrigators out there, and there's some very efficient ones too. So generally, surface irrigation is somewhat less efficient. But remember, if you apply 100 acre feet and you consume 80 acre feet on a surface irrigation system, the extra 20 that you applied is still in your system.
Going down, that's what I was going to say. We're going to recoup some of it, but it's going to go down into the.
It's how you irrigate. Irrigation management matters.
Yeah.
If you're turning it on and going away for 36 hours and letting it rip, that's not so good. You're going to standing water, around and such. So,
Okay.
Is it going to be an advantage to have meters on your wells, so you know the difference between applied and ET, to know that that is going down and maybe recharging?
I strongly support and encourage people to have meters in their wells. That way you know both pieces, right? And you know basically how efficient you are in irrigation. And if the demand is the demand, if you can back off on the pumping and go from 80% efficient to 85% efficient, you're just using that less electricity or diesel.
But we're going to get credit for another 20 or whatever.
The bill's on the consumer.
Now, do we have to keep track of our water that we put on out of the canal? Do we need to keep track of that, or is the canal company gonna,
The canal company
will take care of that? Okay.
Rodney?
Have you projected what it will cost to provide the mechanism, the meter? Of course, the property owner will pay for that, right? Just like we have paid for drip irrigation or whatever. I see the Bennetts, all my Whitney, Akron, Layton. Okay, very expensive. What is the projected cost, say, for an agricultural well just drilled within the last 3 years to supply the water for 38 acres of mandarin oranges, which need water? And you just don't water during off-peak time because you need to make sure that your crop makes it. What is the projected cost, say, to?
All right, for your specific example of like 38 acres of mandarin, I might recommend talking to Kevin to, maybe do that math, but I've seen the range of a well kind of vary throughout the GSA, and I don't know if given an average, I don't have that right now, but we can work with you to get some.
My other question is, I'm a retired teacher from Riverdale, and I think one of the things that I taught best was economics. Why, we haven't seen your budget either. In your budget, can you, say, buy, say, how many meters in here? 1,000 meters for the farmers in our area? Isn't it cheaper economically to hire somebody and buy 1,000 meters and even put up to bid what it costs to install those? And that way the farmers are responsible for maintaining and metering the water coming out of the wells that we have invested.
So we've looked into a metering program and trying to get a federal grant for it because of the size that it would cost to get everybody the same exact meter in North Fork. Like we're in the, over $5 million to do that, which is why we're not going the mandatory meter route. Land IQ is 81 cents an acre for 168,000 acres. That's what we're paying to measure the entire GSA. And that's, who's got a calculator to do that math?
A lot cheaper.
It's a lot cheaper than 5 million. The metering is optional for landowners who, maybe in some cases they just don't like the Land IQ data. It's too far off for them. It's too much of an estimate. They like to have their meter numbered. And so it's, some folks already have a meter. That cost is already, taken care of. So that being said, we haven't priced out meters for everybody because it's not mandatory. On your 38 acres of mandarin oranges, Land IQ is probably pretty good.
They're a good system, but there are many things that come with that. Coyotes biting into your hoses and people who walk through your property and can't keep their hands off.
Bobo?
Aren't we kind of encouraging everybody to line their canals in their water districts?
That's a surface water district.
But we are, right? Because we don't want to give credit to the white zone. If
we have some irrigation district members here. Are they talking about
shooting for recharge? So
I mean, it's a surface water question to ask the surface water districts. The GSA doesn't have water, doesn't have surface water. Those operational decisions are for those canal companies.
okay,
I mean, it's I see what you're saying. I see what we want to do to encourage, back to my plus sign. we want as much as this. We want to capture, if the GSA is not encouraging surface waters one way or another, I guess, we want them to recharge, we want them to deliver water.
We're encouraging them to line.
The GSA is not encouraging them to line their canals. If that's their choice, they're doing it, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's almost like
You don't
a,
see that in CID or FID. They're lining canals. That's all part of their recharge system.
All right.
Really, they're spending money to build.
CID.
This is why seal the canal and stop that recharge.
yeah.
Where's their, I'm not aware, who's sealing their canal at the moment?
I don't know if anybody.
CID and FID are not.
No, so I just, you know.
It's just like a really long skinny recharge basin, right?
Right. Oh, and
If one of your demand management or one of your sustainability variables is to install and maintain recharge basins, a canal is a long skinny recharge basin.
Exactly.
the
It's
river
about a 15
is a giant recharge,
No kidding.
you know,
That one really makes
Yeah.
a difference.
Pond,
When they
right?
run that river.
if they run the river in a way that helps everybody in two sub-basins, right?
North
All
Fork
for
and-
it.
You got North Fork and
I
South
guess
Fork.
one thing
running
to
at the same
distinct,
time.
to separate us from CID and FID, right? They are an irrigation district and the GSA, right? North Kings GSA is FID and the city of Fresno, city of Clovis, and a few others. CID is Central Kings GSA. They're the irrigation district and the GSA. North Fork Kings is kind of like this hodgepodge of surface water holders, right? And there's not like a unifying, right? Westlands, think of Westlands. Westlands is its own sub-basin, its own GSA, and its own water district, right? They're vertically integrated, right? So one decision, the left hand knows what the right hand's doing at all times. Here in North Fork, we have a groundwater regulator made up of surface water providers. And we encourage everyone to think holistically, but I don't have a hammer to make them do it, I guess if that's a better answer to your point.
It's not really an answer, because it's encouraging, you know, if you have this water stock and you don't want to share it with the white zone, so you're going to protect it for your property to get the groundwater credits.
Who's sealing their canal?
Who's still, in my area, there's a lot of canals still
What do they use?
plastic. And
Wow.
What district?
what district? I'm in North Fork and South Fork.
But no, which surface water district is lining the canal?
Probably more so in South Fork.
No, what?
Which irrigation
which-
district?
this-
Oh, yeah, probably the Moore Canal,
Okay, outside of North Fork.
this district.
You're right. So in North Fork, no one's doing that.
Okay, I'll take your word.
Yes, sir.
When you did the ground proofing, what's the furthest off your number versus the person that had the accurate meter with a calibrated meter with all the numbers? How far off was yours compared to that?
Our average,
The average, the worst case scenario.
worst case scenario, I think, I'd have to look back. Probably, you're asking against the station data, against the model number, or a meter against apply, or consume?
You've got certain farms, you had calibrated meters, accurate meters.
Oh,
You're monitoring yours versus theirs.
yeah, I can show you a slide.
What was the furthest you were off?
I can show
on
you,
that?
yeah.
I mean, that's compared to meter against yours.
That's a good question here. I have these in the back end because I anticipated your question. Okay, so this is almonds again as an example, okay? It's just a single crop example. This is water year 2022, very dry. Water year 2023. These are individual orchards, and these numbers on the bottom are the age of the orchard. Okay, so first year orchard, 20-year orchard, and everything in between. You'll notice this 20-year orchard went to 21, same orchard next year. Okay? The two blue bars stacked on top of one another are the sum of the applied water from a meter, the dark blue part, and the precipitation addition. Like I call that total received water in that field. You'll notice that the light blue bars on the tops of all these orchards is much smaller in 22 than it was in 23 because you got 2 or 3 times more rainfall in 2023 water year. The green, so that's the total water that hit that field, that block, that orchard, that 11-year-old orchard, okay? The green line, the point in each of these is the ET for every single one of those orchards. And remember I said on like the second or third slide, your consumed water can't be more than the sum of irrigation plus precipitation. So your green line better be at or below the sum of the two, okay? Well, here we have one that is below. What does that mean?
That means you ain't getting enough water.
Well, there's that. Well, he actually is. And here it is again, even in a wet year, the ET is higher than the total water that orchard received. That's this is the same orchard year over year. Why do you think that's the case? The meter is not correct. So there's two things you're measuring here. And this is the way that we back check meters, basically. So all the rest of them are about where they should be. We're on the upper end, you know, we're in the upper end of that stacked blue bar. But this one, we went back to the owner of this meter and they indeed did verify, oh yeah, it was not calibrated correctly. Or it was off, or we missed a reading or something like that. So we do this on 170 blocks. This is just, I don't know, 30. So we do pistachios and citrus and almonds. This is all after the fact. We don't use this to calibrate the model. We use the stations to calibrate the models. But we care about working with growers. When I said that I really appreciate when growers have accurate, well-maintained, well-installed meters and share that meter data with us, we will work with the growers. And this is the types of analyses we do after the fact to say, yeah, we're about right. But in this case, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And then I went and talked to the grower with that well, and this is the case. So it's kind of a backwards check on the meter. Meters aren't right either. So yeah, always.
Okay, I'm confused. So do we need a meter on our well or not?
No.
No,
Don't need a meter on our
you do not need a meter in North Fork Kings.
Nope.
You can use land
But it's
IQ.
good for yourself.
Some folks are like, I don't want to use
So you
land
don't
IQ.
have
I
to
have my
make it
meter. My
right
meter's
on.
the best thing ever. Okay,
Fine.
show us your data.
Okay, I like it.
But you gotta be committed to having it calibrated,
Right.
installed right,
Yeah.
maintained, read right, telemetered.
The beauty of it is, right, land IQ is, the cost is right, it's a, DWR is using it, so the state accepts it, right? It's, even if it's not perfect, even if it's close enough, it's cheaper, and the state signs off on it, I take the deal, right? Like,
And another thing, we're the whole landscape. We're everywhere and it's all done the same way. So at a minimum, it's relative across the landscape. We know the low, we know the high. And with the stations, the goal there is to get the accuracy down. So even if it was just a relative reading across the landscape, we would know which grower consumed, we know which grower are consuming the most and we know which growers are consuming the least and everywhere in between. By ET.
Is there a different,
So it's equitable across the landscape.
is there a different per crop, how much water allotment you're gonna get? Say you farm
the allocation won't be based off of
crops. It says,
but we might have to consider irrigation efficiencies per crop. So on Watermark right now, if you do log into your Watermark account and you click on the individual parcels, there'll be like a drop-down box for what, is the land IQ crop right on your parcel? You know, and so once you click on that button, yep, or if it's pistachios on this block, you don't gotta touch it, hey, it's right. Or if it,
You can change it.
if it mixes, if someone does have peaches here, and it's actually, it's peaches, it's not almonds, right? You can make that distinction within. At some point, we're gonna have to think of, because in the math homework that we do with the sub-basin on that water calc, like where do we put the precipitation, where do we put the seepage, we're gonna have to make an estimate on irrigation efficiency.
Correct.
And that's gonna be different per crop, per system, right? So we might have to figure out irrigation efficiency based on crop.
Okay.
So starting in 2027, is there going to be a specific acre feet that you can pump per acre? And if you exceed that, it's a $500 penalty per acre foot. And where does that $500 go to?
So we have not set a penalty number yet. This whole workshop series is to like step by step go through the process. And so we're hoping to have like the number, right? And as you've seen in other GSAs, it's less than 1 acre foot, right? So that pumping limit, the native sustainable yield will be less than 1. And we'll probably start it at a higher number. So this number plus some extra, that might total 1 or more. And then we'll ramp it down till 2040. And then, so as we go through this process, we're gonna be talking about what those numbers are, when they would go into effect. Once everybody has a good feel of the numbers, we're going to have to, we have to do a Prop 218 election to set fees. So we'd have to go out to the landowners like we did with our land-based assessment. We'd have to say, hey, we're gonna go to a pumping fee. You know, we think that pumping fee to be sustainable is X. And then you would vote on it. And then long-term plan is, you know, once we get to a certain spot, we'd probably lower our per acre assessment to cover some of the administrative things. And then anything like GSP and water related, tack it on to the pumping side. And so that's kind of the long-term strategy that we have to work out over the next 2 years.
So you're just gonna give an allotment per acre, per field, regardless of whether they're growing?
Yes.
Because some crops need a lot more water than others. So what happens to them? Do you give them more water, or what happens?
Everyone will have to
Pay?
do some number crunching on
So what's
how it affects
sustainable
them.
right now for us? We're 50,000 over our whole thing, so that's an acre foot.
In the GSP, the sustainable yield for the sub-basin is like 980,000 acre feet.
No, for us, for our growth.
Right. We're still working through counting the mountain runoff and the precipitation. We're still working on those. And those numbers, as we discuss them at the technical committee meetings, and that, we'll have the sustainable yield number.
But you were saying we were like 160,000 acre feet in our thing, and we're 50 to 70,000 overdraft, right? So that's what acre foot we're overdrafting?
But that number we're overdrafted, I guess what's in the GSP, what's our North Fork sustainable yield number? If we have a 70,000 overdraft.
So the sustainable yield for the sub-basin is 1.2 million acre feet a year.
I undershot, 1.2. Then North Forks, if we have that 70 overdraft, roughly.
Right, so that's around 150 or 160,000 acre feet, right? So that's about an acre foot of overdraft, a third, or is that the?
It's less than that.
0.35.
Yeah, so it's a third.
Well, so the 168,000 within the GSA, there's really about 135,000 that's farmed, that's irrigated. So, and we're overdrafted about 70,000 acre feet, so on average, we're probably half a foot per acre, but that's not, you can't just take that average because of those that have surface water areas versus non, and who pumps more and not. So you can't just necessarily take the average numbers.
So the people who have surface water, they're gonna be fine. I'm just saying that's just a general rule, right? Except for a half an acre for a third.
I wouldn't say fine, right? Like everybody's gonna have to adjust something. They will have more than the folks in the white.
What if we have a real wet year?
So if we have a wet year and everybody is recharging and
And
they're
we
filling the
don't
ditches.
we don't
and they're
pull as
filling-
much water out, so do we get a credit for next year on
If we
it?
pump less, all of that water goes into the various buckets of the sustainable yield, which throughout this workshop series, we'll have, you know, the graph of how the buckets fill up, right?
Okay.
And so in a wet year, pumping less, sinking more, we count all of that against our overdraft debt,
Okay.
and it helps us out.
Okay. But we are gonna get some kind of credit for it because you might have a real dry year where you don't get any percent, right? So,
And then to that point, that's where the transfers and the carryovers come into. When we get to the rules section of it, right? Folks will be able to transfer credits to another landowner, and or you can use up all yours, in North Fork, because we would, specifically on the west half of the GSA, Crescent and Stinson don't always get water every year, right? So they'll probably eat up any credits they have real fast.
okay.
So carry over and transfer.
Is there any recharge basin program? Anything being done to develop recharge basin?
So all of the recharge that we have in North Fork Kings at the moment is all private landowner driven or the public irrigation district driven. The ponds belong to the surface water users right now. The GSA, that Elkhorn Jail project that just, if you've noticed, moving dirt over there, the County of Fresno owns that Elkhorn facility. They're turning it into a law enforcement training facility, and so they needed dirt for the shooting range. And so with this hole in the ground, they are giving it to the GSA as a recharge pond.
Yeah.
And then hopefully when 41 expands, they'll need some dirt on the west side of that property, and the GSA would have, for the good of everybody, probably about 130 acres worth of recharge in that section. That would be the only GSA recharge project. And then we are discussing, typically monthly, I try to have a theme for all my meetings, right? And next month, we're gonna be talking about recharge incentive programs and what I like to call a red light, green light system, right? Where on a green light year, it's really wet, we encourage everyone to take water and recharge. Or a year like this, where the Kings River's at 80%, right? Hey, yellow light, let's farm first, let's extend the irrigation season, and then, recharge at the end maybe, and then red light, hey, there's just no water, don't recharge. So we're gonna be talking about that in August.
Okay, they're on Davis there. They dug the dirt out and made a hole there for a recharge deal there for
Davis.
Laguna on 41. Davis.
43 and Gate, that's the Laguna.
Oh, yeah, yes.
That'll be a recharge station there for.
That is a Laguna-owned recharge pond within the GSA. So it's kind of it's Laguna's pond, but all of those numbers show up on aggregate for the GSA. But any credits associated with that pond go to Laguna and its growers.
Okay, it will help us grow.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Speaking of that, so North Fork oversees, they're the GSA, but there's a lot of water districts within, right?
Right.
So are you regulating Laguna, or is Laguna regulating themselves based upon the recharge that they put back in?
Regulating what?
Their growers. Are you guys the
The
regulators?
GSA is the groundwater pumping regulator.
Correct. So will Laguna have different rules compared to what you guys are implementing? Because, I hear all these recharge projects Laguna's doing, right? So obviously their groundwater is gonna be, I don't know about the other guy, but I'm assuming it's gonna be better than other districts.
So I guess the GSA will have, for the sake of conversation, an allocation of 1 foot per acre.
Yeah.
And then if Laguna wants to regulate growers in different zones within that 1 acre foot realm.
So you'll be giving Laguna the direction of.
It's got, hey, on the groundwater
allocation,
right? There's, water folks, they have this discussion all the time, right? Surface water, groundwater, separate things, right? And because I mentioned where I'm not a surface water regulator, so Laguna has its own recharge policy, right?
Yeah.
Anything dealing with the water coming into Laguna from the river and being dispersed to its growers is regulated by Laguna. Groundwater pumping is regulated by the GSA. which Laguna has a board seat on the GSA.
So it'd be reasonable to conclude that where across the district you had a 2-foot allocation, Laguna could have a 2.5 because they're putting that much into the system?
We plan to go, short answer, yes. Short answer, yes. We plan, as we do the math portion of this exercise, the folks closer to the river with more surface water will have an adjusting variable compared to someone in the wide area who has no surface water at all.
So there's a lot of get into these detailed questions here, but basically, the GSA, of all the water that happened, precipitation, surface, I don't know, whatever, they gotta report to the DWR, the state or something, says, hey, in our 168,000 acres, we're at this balance. But internally, because there's 7 irrigation districts that got different amount of surface water, blah, 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 internally, we're not all gonna get treated equally when it comes to pumping restrictions.
Or one analogy I tried to make was like, think of the allocation as a flat tax. It's a flat tax across the GSA to everybody equally. The folks who have more surface water based on geography have a higher income, and they're paying the same flat tax as someone in a wide area that has no income. And so the allocation is a flat tax, and there's haves and there's have-nots.
But if a certain irrigation district like Laguna had banked more water, even though GSA says everybody gets 1, their guys might get a little extra, be able to pump out because they banked some.
The
GSA can't equally distribute the water bank.
No, I cannot take Laguna's surface water and give it to someone else.
No.
I can't do it.
So they would have less of a penalty, essentially.
They'll have the
same.
They'll have the same penalty.
Yes.
They'll have more money to pay
it back to you.
Yeah.
To replenish.
Laguna has the ability to add to your bank account.
Gotcha.
Through deliveries to you or through losses in the canal, recharge, they can add to your bank account.
Just want to thank everyone for coming. I know you probably have a lot more questions. Utilize the Engage page. That's like the #1 place to go, or call us at the GSA office. Reminder that the second workshop is September 24th at this exact same location. We will have an even more in-depth discussion about the same topics, and you'll have the opportunity to talk to our engineer, Justin again. So we encourage you to attend. Okay, thank you all.